Anniversaries are supposed to feel magical. That morning, I woke expecting warmth. Maybe a kiss, maybe her usual laugh when she caught me sneaking coffee before breakfast. But the air in our house felt heavy, too quiet, as if even the walls knew something I didn't. She was in the kitchen, hair loose over her shoulders, scrolling her phone with the kind of smile I hadn't seen in months. For a second, I thought maybe she was planning something sweet for me, a surprise. But then I spoke. "Morning," I said, trying to sound casual. She jumped slightly, tilted the screen away, and replied with a hurried, "Morning." Her voice carried that softness she used when she was hiding something. I brushed it off at first. People get busy, people get distracted. Still, my chest tightened. Today wasn't just any day. It was the day we were supposed to celebrate years of promises, laughter, and whispered vows under fairy lights. And yet, she couldn't put her phone down long enough to meet my eyes. Throughout the day, small cracks widened. When I suggested brunch, she said she had errands. When I offered to take her shopping, she said she wasn't in the mood. Each excuse stacked up like bricks in a wall between us. By afternoon, the suspicion had turned into a quiet hum inside my head, loud enough that I couldn't ignore it. That evening, while she showered, I noticed her phone buzzing on the nightstand. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. But anniversaries are about trust, aren't they? And in that moment, my trust felt like glass already chipped. I reached for the phone, telling myself I'd only look at the notification. Just one. The screen lit up. A man's name. A message preview. "Last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again." My blood ran cold. My throat dried. For a second, I thought maybe it was some misunderstanding, maybe an old friend being too flirty. But then the phone buzzed again. "Next time, we'll make it even better. You looked incredible in that dress." I dropped the phone as if it burned me. My reflection in the mirror across the room looked like a stranger, eyes wide, lips pressed tight, a man holding onto the last thread of denial. When she stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, damp hair curling at her shoulders, I forced a smile. She smelled like vanilla shampoo, the same scent that used to pull me close in bed. And even then, even with betrayal echoing in my chest, I felt that spark, that pull. My body didn't care about the messages. It only remembered the warmth of her skin. She kissed my cheek absent-mindedly, the way you'd pet a dog you've already stopped loving. "Be ready by 7, she said. "I've got a surprise for us." A surprise. The irony almost made me laugh. I didn't confront her. Not then. Confrontation would have ended the story too soon. Instead, I nodded, slid my hands into my pockets, and pretended everything was fine. Because I knew, deep down, if she thought she was fooling me, I could use that to my advantage. The hours leading up to dinner were torture. She hummed as she got ready, slipping into a black dress that clung to her curves. She asked me to zip it up, and when my fingers brushed the warm skin of her back, I nearly flinched. The attraction was still there, mixed with disgust, a twisted cocktail of emotions. I watched her paint her lips red, watched her adjust the neckline to reveal just enough to catch a stranger's eye. My chest tightened with rage, but also with something else, the bitter realization that I still wanted her, even as she lied. When we finally left the house, she slid her arm through mine, smiling as if nothing was wrong. To the outside world, we were the perfect couple celebrating another year together. Inside, I carried the weight of her betrayal like a hidden blade pressed against my ribs. At the restaurant, she ordered champagne, laughing too loudly at the waiter's small jokes, leaning closer to me as if trying to prove we were still in love. Maybe she sensed something in my silence. Maybe she thought affection could cover up the cracks. But as I raised my glass, looking at her lips stained with red wine, I made a decision. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't even confront her tonight. No, tonight, I would play along. I would let her believe I was blind, that her secret was safe. And while she was busy lying to me, I would be busy planning. Because revenge, I realized, isn't served in the heat of anger. It's crafted in silence, sharpened like a blade, and revealed when the liar least expects it. That night, while she curled against me in bed, whispering a distracted, happy anniversary, I stared at the ceiling and carved my plan into stone. I would give her a surprise she'd never forget. I woke before dawn with the shape of a plan pressed against my skull like a stamp. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you notice every small sound. The heater's sigh, a floorboard's memory, the soft buzz of her phone charging on the dresser. I stared at it for a long time, the way a diver studies dark water before he jumps. I didn't touch it. Not yet. If I moved too soon, I'd spook the lie and it would run. Revenge needs patience more than rage. Instead, I made coffee and replayed yesterday in my head. The message preview, the towel, the kiss that felt like a receipt for something I hadn't bought. When she padded into the kitchen, hair tied up, robe loose at the collar, she smiled in that automatic way good liars do. Her eyes skimmed my face, hunting for cracks. I gave her none. Big day. I asked lightly. Meetings, she said, pouring tea. I'll be home by 6. Promise. Promise. The word landed like a coin dropped into a dry well. When she left for work, I began. First, paper. Lies always leave crumbs. In her vanity drawer, beneath a velvet box I'd given her 3 anniversaries ago, I found a folded receipt from a restaurant we'd never been to together. Late night, 2 glasses of champagne, 1 dessert with an extra fork. I photographed it, then tucked it back exactly as I'd found it. In her office tote, careful, careful, I found a hotel key sleeve with a date stamped a week earlier than the message I'd seen. Photograph. Replace. Breathe. I combed our shared phone bill online and printed the call logs. A number repeated like a heartbeat after midnight. I ran it through a reverse lookup. The name came up private, but the city matched the hotel receipt. I highlighted the sequences, the way a teacher marks answers a student swears he never saw. By noon, I had a folder on my laptop labeled Anniversary. Inside, subfolders named with the calm cruelty of truth, receipts, calls, photos, screenshots. I told myself I was preparing for clarity, for court if it came to that, but a harder part of me admitted I was also building a stage. Her phone was the last risk. I wouldn't guess the passcode. I didn't need to. People repeat their patterns. She used her birthday for everything. Gym lock, luggage code, the safe we almost bought. When she showered that evening, I tried it. The screen unlocked with a soft click, like a door that had been waiting to open. I didn't scroll wildly. I searched. His messages were pinned near the top with a star. The thread was a corridor of flammable air. You looked unreal last night. Miss you already. Next time, my place. There were photos, nothing explicit, just the angles that only a lover is invited to see. The neckline of the black dress, her mouth half open in a grin she rarely wore for me anymore. Heat rose in me, shame and want and fury wrestling until my hands shook. There were also plans. Thursday, same hotel. Friday, late meeting. Saturday, your sisters. Lies nested inside lies like dolls. I took screenshots of the worst, a careful surgeon making incisions. Then I locked the phone, set it back, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I looked both older and sharper, a man who had decided something permanent. That night, I became the man she expected. I cooked pasta, opened wine, asked about her day. She relaxed, shoulders dropping, laughter warming the room like a candle. When she leaned over to taste the sauce, the robe sleeve slipped, and my eyes betrayed me, flicking to skin I knew as well as my own hands. Electricity snapped between us, that familiar pull, body memory rising against my will. She noticed, smiled slow, and let her fingers trail along my wrist. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to heat and scent. Vanilla, salt, the ghost of last night's lipstick. Then the messages flashed across my mind like a warning light. I stepped back, stirred the pot, and said something dumb about oregano. She laughed and moved on. I stored the moment away like all the others. Evidence, but of a different kind. Betrayal doesn't erase attraction, it poisons it. After dinner, she curled into me on the couch, her leg thrown over mine, breath warm at my neck, while a show neither of us watched flickered on the screen. She texted under the blanket sometimes, quick, practiced motions, then tucked the phone against her thigh with a sigh. I let her think I didn't notice. Let her think I was the kind of man who trusts because he's simple, not because he's hunting. When she finally fell asleep, I slipped free and stood in the hallway, staring at our wedding photo. We looked so certain there, mouths mid-laugh, eyes reckless with promise. I imagined that man stepping out of the frame to ask me what happened. I would tell him the truth. Nothing happened. Things were simply revealed. The invitation went out the next morning. I called her favorite restaurant and booked the private room for Saturday night. Anniversary dinner, I told the manager. A surprise. He offered roses, a violinist, a customized dessert. I accepted the roses. The rest I didn't need. I had my own music planned. Then I texted her parents, my parents, our two closest friends. I kept the wording soft. We're celebrating Saturday night. She doesn't know. Join us at 7? Each yes pinged back like a bell. The net tightened. For him. The number on the bill. The voice behind the messages. I did nothing. There are times you don't invite the villain. You just make sure there are enough seats for witnesses. By afternoon, I'd rented a small projector and a portable screen. Too dramatic? Maybe. But words can be argued with. Light cannot. I trimmed the screenshots, redacted anything crueler than truth, and sequenced them with the receipts and call logs. I added timestamps to the bottom right corner in simple white text. The slideshow looked like an audit, not a tantrum. That mattered. At dusk, she sent me a photo from the office, a coffee cup, a laptop, her hand with the ring I'd saved for months to buy. Don't be mad, running late, she wrote. Rain check on movie? I stared at the ring on her finger until my jaw ached. When she came home, the rain had started, the kind that glazes everything into reflection. She stood in the doorway wiping her heels, hair damp, cheeks bright. She looked achingly beautiful, the kind of beautiful that would be hard to hate in any other story. She kissed me slow, and I tasted mint and something like apology. Saturday. I whispered into her hair. I have something special planned. She pulled back, eyes lit, curiosity fighting caution. You do? I smiled. Roses and everything. She laughed, relieved, and I watched a lie loosen its tie. Later, in bed, her hand slipped over my chest, tracing idle patterns like old times. Heat uncoiled low in me, and I let it for a moment. The way you let music play in an empty room because silence feels too sharp. When she turned toward me, breath sweet, I kissed her forehead instead and said I was tired. A small wound bloomed in her pride. I felt it like a pulse. She rolled away, and the bed grew wide as a river. In the dark, I rehearsed. Not the anger, that was easy. I rehearsed calm. The line between humiliation and justice is tone. I would stand, I would thank everyone for coming, and I would let the light speak. No shouting. No names I couldn't take back. Just the truth, bright and in order, for the people who should have mattered enough to keep it. On the nightstand, her phone glowed once, then slept. I watched it until my eyes stung. 3 more days, I told myself. 3 days, and the curtain would rise. The next morning, the world looked ordinary, but inside me nothing was ordinary anymore. The coffee machine hissed, the neighbor's dog barked, the mailman walked his slow route, yet all I could hear was the buzz of her secret, replaying like a bad song stuck on repeat. She floated around the kitchen humming softly, the way she did when she wanted me to believe she was carefree. I studied her movements the way a detective studies a suspect. Every flick of her eyes, every extra beat before she answered a simple question. What time will you be back tonight? I asked, trying to sound casual. Not late, she said, buttering toast. 7, maybe 8. Depends on the meeting. The meeting. That excuse again. I smiled as though I believed her, leaning on the counter like a man happy in his marriage. She smiled back, relieved, and kissed my cheek before leaving. Her lipstick left a mark I didn't bother to wipe away. Sometimes, evidence doesn't need to be hidden. Once the door clicked shut, I sat at the table and exhaled. My folder of proof was growing fat, but the show had yet to begin. A trap isn't only about what you catch. It's about how convincingly you play bait. That day, I wore my mask. I sent her a mid-morning text. Thinking of you today. Can't wait for Saturday. She replied with a heart emoji and a string of kisses. If I hadn't seen the other thread, I might have melted. But now, I read her symbols like codes in a language of lies. In the afternoon, I called my mother. Can you and Dad make dinner Saturday night? Private room at La Couronne. It's a surprise for our anniversary. Her voice lit up. Of course, sweetheart. She'll be so touched. Touched. That word nearly broke me. My mother still thought my wife was a treasure, still remembered her as the glowing bride who once hugged her too tightly. I swallowed the knot in my throat and said, she has no idea. One by one, I contacted her parents, my father-in-law's booming voice promising to bring a fine bottle of wine, her mother gushing about how thoughtful I was. Friends too. Each RSVP another stitch in the net I was weaving. By evening, the mask felt heavy. When she came home, she looked tired but oddly radiant. cheeks flushed, eyes bright. She slipped off her heels and dropped her bag by the door, stretching like a cat. "Tough day?" I asked. "You don't know the half of it," she said with a sigh, collapsing onto the couch. Her phone buzzed. She silenced it without looking at me, then leaned her head on my shoulder. The scent of her perfume filled my nose, sweet, alluring, the same one she must have worn at the hotel. I let my arm curl around her, my hand resting lightly at her hip. Her body pressed into mine in that familiar way, and sparks lit up in me before I could kill them. Betrayal doesn't erase attraction. It turns it into something dangerous, like craving fire even as it burns. She tilted her face toward me, lips parting slightly. The invitation was there. My pulse quickened, and for a moment, I almost gave in. But I pulled back with a small smile. "Saturday," I whispered. "I'm saving all my energy for Saturday." Her eyes widened, then softened with satisfaction. She thought I meant passion. In truth, I meant execution. The next day, I added finishing touches to my plan. I rehearsed my lines in the mirror, practicing the calm tone I would need to keep. No shouting, no theatrics, just the truth, framed like a painting no one could deny. I tested the projector again, lining up the sequence, receipts, call logs, screenshots, photos. Each slide another nail in the coffin of her lies. I imagined the gasps, the stunned silence, the moment when the room would turn and she would be left exposed, her mask ripped away. That night, she cooked dinner. Pasta, her specialty. She leaned over the pot, stirring, her neckline dipping just enough to tease. She caught me watching and smirked. "Like what you see?" I forced a grin. "Always." She walked over, spoon in hand, and offered me a taste. The sauce was rich, tangy, almost perfect. Her finger brushed mine as she took the spoon back, lingering just long enough to spark heat in my chest. My body wanted her. My mind wanted her ruined. We ate together, laughing at nothing, clinking glasses. To anyone passing by, we were the picture of love. But I knew better. I was the actor, she was the liar. And Saturday, the curtain would rise. As she curled into me on the couch later, phone buzzing quietly under her thigh, I whispered, "This anniversary will be unforgettable." She smiled against my chest, whispering, "I can't wait." Neither could I, because while she thought she was walking into romance, she was walking straight into judgment. And I would be the one holding the gavel. The mask I wore during the day grew heavier with each passing hour, but behind it, my collection of evidence multiplied. By now, it wasn't just suspicion, it was a case file. If she tried to deny it, she would be fighting against her own handwriting, her own voice, her own images. I began with the receipts. The restaurant stub I'd found hidden in her drawer wasn't the only one. A second, crumpled slip surfaced in her purse, this one from a bar across town. 2 cocktails, a late-night timestamp, and a note scribbled by the waiter. "See you both again soon." Both. Not her alone. Both. I slipped the receipt into my folder and replaced it with a crisp $20 bill, so she wouldn't suspect it was gone. Next came the phone logs. I stared at the repeated number until the digits branded themselves into my brain. Late-night calls, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes only 3. Always after midnight. Always when she thought I was asleep. I printed them and highlighted the patterns, then stacked the pages neatly in my folder. The hotel evidence was the hardest to stomach. The key sleeve I had photographed earlier matched the name of a boutique hotel just 40 minutes from our home. Not business travel, not some work conference across the state. Just far enough to hide, close enough to make excuses. When I called the front desk pretending to be a husband confirming a wife's reservation, the clerk confirmed her last visit without hesitation. My chest tightened, but my hand was steady as I wrote down the dates. Her texts remained the crown jewel. Every evening, while she showered, I unlocked her phone with the same code and snapped screenshots. I never took more than a handful. I couldn't risk being caught. But each one was enough to paint a vivid picture. "I can still smell you on me." Saturday night was unreal. "Same time next week." "He doesn't suspect a thing." The last line twisted like a knife. "He doesn't suspect a thing." I stared at it until my vision blurred, until I almost laughed at the irony. She thought I was blind. But I wasn't blind. I was sharpening my sight into a weapon. One night, I nearly slipped. She had left her phone on the nightstand again, and when the buzz woke me, I saw a preview of a photo she had just received. My hand hovered over the phone, but she stirred beside me, her breath catching. I froze, pretending to adjust the blanket. She rolled over, sighed, and returned to sleep. My heart hammered so loudly I thought it might wake her. That close. Too close. The attraction between us didn't vanish. It taunted me. One evening, as I zipped up the back of her dress before she left for another meeting, my fingers brushed her skin, warm and smooth. She leaned into me, just slightly, and whispered, "Don't wait up." Her perfume clung to me after she left, a reminder of the woman I once loved and the liar she had become. My body wanted to pull her back, but my mind reminded me of the slideshow waiting on my laptop. Desire was a weakness I couldn't afford. By now, the presentation was nearly complete. Slide 1, receipts. Slide 2, call logs. Slide 3, hotel confirmations. Slide 4, texts. Slide 5, a simple message: the truth doesn't need decoration. I tested the sequence again and again, making sure each image was sharp, each transition smooth. I wanted no doubt, no escape, no chance for her to twist the story. Her family, my family, our friends, all had confirmed their attendance. They thought they were coming to witness love. Instead, they would see betrayal stripped naked under the harsh light of evidence. Still, I kept my mask on at home. I kissed her cheek when she returned late. I listened to her half-hearted stories about long meetings, and I even joked with her over dinner. She believed me. She had to. But at night, lying beside her, I whispered silently to myself, "Saturday is coming." And when it did, I would finally put every piece of proof in my hands onto the table, and there would be no lies left to hide behind. The reservation email from La Couronne read like a promise. Private salon, Saturday, 7 p.m., 18 guests, roses on the table. I read it twice, then a third time, as if repetition could steady my hands. If love had a ceremony, so did truth. I would make sure this one had witnesses. The first invitations went to the people who had blessed our vows. I called my parents during lunch, kept my voice warm. Private room, our anniversary. She has no clue. Can you be there? My mother made the soft sound she saves for happy news. Of course, darling. She'll melt. Melt. The word stuck like a seed that would grow into something else. Her parents next. Her father boomed his approval and insisted on bringing a bottle from his cellar for the kids. Her mother asked what color dress she should wear, as if the right color could protect her from what was coming. "Anything you love," I said, because cruelty doesn't need to be loud to be complete. Our two closest friends replied in minutes with exploding heart emojis, the modern confetti of celebration. A co-worker of mine, discreet, observant, agreed to come for a surprise toast. I told no one what kind of surprise it was. The only person I didn't invite was the man on the other end of her messages. Villains don't need a chair when the house comes down. I wrote the message to the restaurant manager carefully, dim lights after the appetizer. A short cue before dessert. Projector on my signal. He replied with a single, elegant understood. We agreed on a code. When I moved my glass to the left side of my plate, the curtain would part. It felt theatrical, almost absurd, and perfect. If she had rehearsed her lie, I would rehearse the truth. At home, I played the attentive husband. Wednesday evening, she floated into the kitchen in a silk blouse that shimmered when she moved. "You're impossible," she teased, looping her arms around my neck. "You won't give me even one hint." Her breath was sweet with wine, her smile set to enchant. Heat rose fast and stupid in my chest. I brushed my fingers along the small of her back and felt her melt into the touch, a reflex we had taught each other. For a heartbeat, I was tempted to forget everything and drown in it. Instead, I kissed her cheek and whispered, "You'll see Saturday." She sighed happily and went back to her glass. Desire is a current. You can't stop it, only steer around the rocks. I finalized the slideshow until the transitions felt like a pulse. Slide 1. The date of our wedding, a photo of us stupid with joy. Slide 2. The first receipt. Slide 3. The call log pattern. Slide 4. The hotel confirmation. Slide 5 and onward. The messages, cropped, time-stamped, unmistakable. I added a final slide. White text on a dark field. The truth doesn't need decoration. Then I exported 2 copies and saved them on separate drives, one in my jacket, one taped under the projector case. If the night decided to turn chaotic, redundancy would be my calm. Thursday, I dropped by La Couronne to walk the room. The private salon was a long rectangle with velvet drapes and a chandelier that made the crystal goblets glow. I tested the HDMI hub and checked sightlines from every chair. No angle would spare her. The manager, a man with the patience of a metronome, watched me with polite curiosity. "Anything else?" he asked. "Place cards," I said. "I'll bring them Saturday." "And could you chill a bottle right behind the curtain?" "For the toast," he asked. "For the ending," I said, and left him to decide what that meant. Friday was the longest day of my life. She sent me a selfie from the office, dim light, tired eyes, a caption, "Can't wait for tomorrow." I typed "me too" and stared at the ring on her finger until the screen blurred. That ring used to mean permanence. Now it felt like a period placed in the wrong sentence. That night, while she showered, I opened her phone one last time. The thread was lively. "Saturday's complicated," she wrote. "Anniversary dinner. I'll steal a moment." His reply came back fast. "Text me from the bathroom. I'll be nearby." My stomach turned. Nearby? Was he bold enough to orbit the restaurant while her family toasted us? I took the screenshot, filed it, and locked the phone. If he came, he'd learn what kind of gravity truth has. We ate takeout on the couch with a blanket over our legs like ordinary people. She rested her head on my shoulder and traced circles on my wrist, her familiar cue. The room narrowed to her perfume and the slow rise and fall of her breath. There's a kind of electricity that only long love carries, a current made of every night you've reached for each other without thinking. It hummed between us, treacherous and beautiful. I let it hum. I didn't trust what it could power. "Tell me just one detail," she murmured, lips almost at my throat. "Color of the flowers. Or the dessert." "Roses," I said. "Always roses." She smiled against my skin. "You do still know me." Oh, I knew her. I knew the hotel, the messages, the way she bit her lip when she lied. I knew the dress she would probably choose for the dinner and the way the room would turn when the lights went down. Saturday morning, I wrote the place cards by hand, letting the ink dry in slow breaths. My parents, her parents, the friends who had stood under strings of lights with us all those years ago. I set hers next to mine at the center of the table, a kindness that wasn't kindness at all. I slipped 2 envelopes into my jacket, duplicate sets of the evidence, labeled with dates. One for her father, one for her mother. They had offered me their daughter. I would offer them the truth. An hour before we left, she twirled in the doorway of the bedroom and asked, "What do you think?" The black dress clung exactly as I remembered. The neckline balanced on that line between tasteful and provocative. She pinned her hair up, exposing the nape of her neck, the place my lips knew first. Attraction flared reckless, a match struck in a dry room. I walked to her, slid the zipper the last inch, and let my knuckles graze her skin. She shivered, and for a second we were only a man and a woman about to go out into a bright city, not a jury and a defendant walking toward a verdict. "You're perfect," I said. The words were true and unbearable. On the drive, she rested her hand on my thigh, light and proprietary. Streetlights washed over us like tides. "I love you," she said softly, almost as if she believed it. "I know," I answered, because words are tools and I needed every one to keep the moment intact. La Couronne's brass swung door breathed us into a world of candlelight and glass. The host smiled, the roses waited, and somewhere behind velvet a screen slept. I felt the projector's weight in my hand like a second, heavier heart. I moved my glass to the left edge of my plate, just to test the gesture, then put it back. She didn't notice. Why would she? The night had been arranged for her comfort. The stage was set for something else. "Ready?" she whispered, fingers lacing with mine. "More than you know," I said, and the private salon opened like a mouth ready to pronounce a single, devastating word: truth. The hours leading to the dinner ticked like a metronome, steady and cruel. Every sound in the house seemed amplified. The zip of her makeup bag, the clatter of her heels on the floor, the faint ping of her phone announcing another message she silenced with a flick of her finger. She was radiant, humming to herself as she applied mascara, her lips curved in a secret smile. She thought tonight was hers. She thought I was blind. I sat on the edge of the bed, jacket folded neatly beside me, my heart beating in slow, deliberate thuds. On the dresser, my laptop rested with the flash drive already packed away. The slideshow was rehearsed to perfection. I could almost hear the gasps, see the widening eyes when the first text appeared in bold across the screen. My own private orchestra of justice. Can you help me with this? She asked, turning her back to me. The black dress shimmered as she held the zipper halfway down, exposing the curve of her shoulder blades. My fingers brushed her warm skin as I pulled it up. She shivered, leaning into the touch, and for a moment the past tugged at me. Every night we had laughed in this room, every promise whispered in the dark. My chest tightened, but I let the feeling pass. This wasn't about nostalgia. This was about the truth. You look incredible, I said. It wasn't a lie. She turned, cheeks flushed, eyes shining. You're being so mysterious about tonight. Roses, private room, the way you've been smiling all week. I almost don't recognize you. I smiled back, and in that smile, I carried every ounce of restraint I had. That's the point. It's a night to remember. The drive to La Couronne was quiet. She kept her hand on my thigh, absently tracing patterns while scrolling her phone with the other. I caught a glimpse of the name lighting up her screen, his name, before she tilted it away. I gripped the wheel harder, but my face remained composed. She thought she was untouchable. That illusion would end tonight. When we arrived, the host greeted us warmly and led us through the polished hallways to the private salon. She squeezed my hand, eyes wide with delight at the roses on the table, the candles flickering against the velvet drapes. Oh my God, you did all this? She whispered, leaning into me. Her breath was sweet with anticipation. I nodded. Only the best for you. She didn't notice the extra chairs. She didn't notice the slight tension in the staff as they prepared for a gathering larger than two. She was too wrapped in the fantasy of her perfect husband. As the first guests began to arrive, her smile faltered. My parents walked in, followed by hers. She blinked rapidly, confusion flickering in her eyes. Wait, what's this? Surprise, I said smoothly, pulling out a chair for her. I thought it'd be nice to celebrate with family. Her mother clapped her hands in delight, hugging us both. Her father boomed about the wine he'd brought. My parents kissed her cheeks, praising the thoughtful dinner. She forced a laugh, but her eyes darted to mine, searching for answers. I gave her none. Then came our friends, cheerful, unsuspecting. The table filled with chatter and clinking glasses. She tried to keep up, her voice too bright, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted her napkin. I leaned close, whispering, relax. Enjoy yourself. Tonight's all about you. Her breath caught. For a moment, I saw panic flicker behind her smile, but she covered it quickly. To everyone else, we were the perfect couple hosting a beautiful anniversary dinner. To me, it was the calm before the storm. The food arrived, dishes placed elegantly before us. She picked at hers, barely eating, her gaze shifting between me and the projector tucked discreetly behind the curtain. She didn't know what it was, but she felt it. I could see the suspicion building, the way her laughter sounded hollow, her hand gripping the stem of her wine glass too tightly. I kept my performance steady. I laughed with friends, toasted with parents, asked questions I didn't care about. Every move calculated, every word rehearsed. The mask had never fit better. When the plates were cleared and the waiter poured champagne for the toast, I felt the moment crystallize. She leaned close, whispering with a nervous smile, "You're up to something, aren't you?" I met her eyes, my voice low, steady. "Yes, and you'll never forget it." She froze, but before she could speak, I rose from my chair, glass in hand. The room hushed. The roses on the table glowed under the chandelier. Behind me, the projector hummed faintly, waiting for its cue. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice calm but carrying weight. "We're here to celebrate another year of marriage, another year of promises. But tonight isn't only about celebrating. It's also about truth." Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. The curtain behind me rustled softly as the staff prepared. I set my glass on the left side of my plate, the signal. The storm was about to break. The chandelier light glittered across crystal glasses, but the room was silent, waiting. My wife's eyes darted nervously from me to the families gathered. Her lips parted as if to interrupt, but no words found their way out. My chest rose and fell steadily. Inside, my heart pounded like war drums, but my face betrayed nothing. "I want to begin," I said, raising my glass, "by thanking each of you for being here. You've stood with us through years of marriage, through celebrations, through struggles. Tonight was meant to be a surprise for her. I gestured toward my wife, whose forced smile trembled on her lips. And it is just not the kind she expected. Gasps fluttered softly around the table. My mother's brow furrowed. Her father leaned forward. My friends exchanged uncertain glances. I took a slow sip of champagne, set the glass down to the left of my plate. The signal. The velvet curtain whispered open. The projector cast its pale glow across the wall, and the first slide appeared. Our wedding photo. The two of us grinning, carefree, bathed in golden light. I let it hang there for a moment. My wife's face softened with confusion, then hope. She thought maybe this was a slideshow of our love story. Maybe I'd forgiven her without her knowing. Then slide 2 appeared. A restaurant receipt dated just 3 weeks ago. 2 entrees, champagne for 2, dessert with an extra fork. Her smile cracked. Slide 3, a hotel confirmation. Her name, the boutique hotel near the city. Date and time printed clearly. Slide 4, the call log. Highlighted lines of late-night conversations with the same number, over and over. Voices murmured around the table. Her mother's hand rose to her mouth. My father shook his head slowly, disbelief settling in. And then, the texts. I had cropped them to be unmistakable. Black letters on a white background. Her words in her voice. Last night was perfect. I can still feel you. He doesn't suspect a thing. Gasps turned into silence. My wife stiffened, her hand frozen on her wine glass. The redness of her lipstick seemed garish under the pale light of betrayal. No, she whispered, almost to herself. It's not what it looks like. But I clicked forward again. Another message. Another timestamp. Another hotel receipt. The wall behind me became a ledger of her lies, undeniable and merciless. Stop, she burst out, her voice breaking, tears threatening. Please don't do this here. I turned to face her fully, my voice calm. Where else should I do it? At home, where only you can deny it. Alone, where truth can be rewritten. No, tonight, everyone sees what I've seen. Her father's jaw clenched. Her mother looked shattered, whispering her daughter's name like a prayer gone unanswered. My friend stared at the table, unsure where to look. And I clicked again. The final slide appeared. White letters on black. The truth doesn't need decoration. The projector hummed softly. I stepped back, letting the words linger, letting them settle into every corner of the room. For a long moment, no one spoke. My wife's tears fell silently, streaking her makeup. She reached for me, hand trembling. Please, I can explain. I shook my head slowly. Explain what? The receipts? The calls? The words you wrote yourself? No explanation changes the truth. Her hand dropped. She stared at me, broken, searching for mercy. But I had none left to give. I turned back to the table, lifted my glass once more. To truth, I said simply. Then I drank. No one else raised their glass. The silence was heavier than any scream. The silence after my toast pressed on the room like a hand over a mouth. Chairs creaked. Someone set a fork down too carefully. My wife stayed frozen, one palm flat on the linen as if she could steady the table by touch alone. Then she drew a shaky breath and reached for me. Please, she whispered, fingers brushing my wrist. Warm, familiar. The old current snapped alive in that thin patch of skin, memories sparking where trust had died. Not here. Let's talk, just us. For a second, the pull was almost physical. The scent of her perfume, the curve of her collarbone, the long reflex of a marriage that once fit like a second body. I peeled her hand from mine gently and set it back on the table. We are past just us, I said. Her mother broke first. Tell him it isn't true, she begged, eyes glossy, voice wobbling between prayer and command. My wife's lips parted, but the projector's blank, cooling face had already spoken for her. She stared at the dark screen like it might reverse itself and give her a kinder version of our life. A vibration buzzed the table. Her phone lit up beside her water glass. She flinched, too slow to hide it this time. The name on the screen wasn't saved, just a number I knew too well. The same digits that had stitched midnight across our bill like a wound. I'm nearby. Bathroom. The room didn't see it. I did. I slid the phone toward me with 2 fingers and let my father-in-law read it first. His jaw hardened as he passed it to his wife, then to mine. Shock moved around the table like a cold front. I looked at my wife. He's here, I said softly. Isn't he? Her eyes flicked right, toward the velvet curtain and the corridor beyond, the faintest tell a person can give. Fear reshaped her face. "Please," she whispered again. "Don't." I nodded to the manager. He understood without words. He was good at waiting and better at timing. While the family sat in a bewildered hush, he slipped through the curtain. I followed. The hallway outside the private salon was a narrow river of light and shadow, its polished floor holding everyone's reflection like a warning. At the far end, near the bar, a man stood with his phone half raised, scanning, then lowering it, then scanning again. He wore a suit a shade too sharp for comfort, his hair parted with a precision I recognized from Monday mornings and quarterly reviews. Evan, my teammate, my confidant over coffee, the man who had passed me a pen in my first interview and said, "Relax, you've got this." He turned at the sound of our steps, a smile preloaded on his mouth, the kind of smile he used on clients and waiters and, apparently, my wife. The smile died when he saw me. "Hey," he said, voice landing wrong in the gorgeous quiet. I was just nearby. I finished for him. Bathroom plan still on. His eyes flicked past me to the manager, calculating exits. I stepped closer. The air between us tasted metallic, like the moment before a storm. For half a heartbeat, I remembered him at our house with a beer in his hand and his feet on my deck rail, telling me my ribs must have been carved from oak because I never bent under pressure. I remembered him clapping my shoulder and calling me brother. "Come in," I said. My voice surprised me with how steady it was. "You've earned a seat." He hesitated. Then he saw something in my face that made him choose obedience over running. He followed me back through the curtain. The room recoiled in a series of small shocks. My wife made a sound like a word tripping on its own feet. Evan stopped 3 paces inside, hands open, palms visible, a salesman's instinct for being harmless. It fooled no one. "Evan," my mother said, the name falling from her mouth as if it had teeth. He tried the script anyway. "This isn't what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like," I said. My wife stood too quickly. Her chair skidded and caught on the rug. "He means nothing," she said, voice trembling into urgency. "It was a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake. I was lonely. We were distant. You were always at work, and Evan was. Right there," I finished. "Always right there." Her father stood. The room went still, like the second right before glass breaks. He didn't swing. He didn't shout. He looked at me instead, eyes flooded with a grief so bright it felt like heat. "What do you need from us?" he asked. "Only your attention," I said. "For one more minute." I turned to Evan. "How long?" His mouth worked before sound came. "A few months." Slide. The projector woke. I clicked to a screen of call logs with dates that pushed far past months. His eyes tracked the lines, and I watched the lie in him lose its posture. "How many?" I asked. He glanced at my wife. She gave him nothing. No nod, no cue, no cover. Betrayal dehydrates fast when the lights come on. "I don't." "I wasn't," he settled on a smaller lie. "It wasn't serious." My wife made a broken laugh. "You said." "I said what you wanted to hear," he snapped, and for the first time the room met the real man. Impatient, entitled, sweating through his perfect suit. A heat rose through me, rage flavored with humiliation, but it cooled just as quickly, like a blade doused after flame. I didn't need anger to finish this. I needed light. I clicked again, not to more texts, but to a photo from our wedding day. Evan stood beside me, hand on my shoulder, smile sincere enough to pass any inspection. In the private salon's hush, the image became a mirror none of us wanted. I spoke to the table, to the parents and friends who still breathed shallow, as if too much air might scatter the pieces. "You've seen the evidence. You've met the man. There's one last thing." I set 2 envelopes on the linen, thick, plain, already addressed. One to her father, one to his wife. Inside, copies of everything. Dates, times, logs, the neat architecture of truth. I slid a 3rd envelope toward my wife. She stared at it like a snake she might charm. "These are my terms," I said quietly. "I won't scream. I won't smear. But I also won't stay married to this. Papers are drafted. Accounts separated. Tomorrow, I'll file." A tremor moved through her. She reached for me again, slower this time, palm up. The electricity between us surged one last, treacherous time, body memory begging for the old script. I let it pass through me without landing. Evan found his voice in the vacuum. "We can figure this out privately," he said, aiming it at me, then at the room, then at anyone who might rescue him. No need to ruin careers. Or families. Careers, my father repeated, incredulity cutting through the fog. You ruined a marriage. The chandeliers sang softly with the air conditioning. The roses waited with their patient, useless beauty. Somewhere out in the corridor, a glass touched another glass and made a small, ceremonial click. I lifted mine, not for a toast this time, but to punctuate the end of a sentence. This is the part where the truth finishes its work, I said. The rest is paperwork. I drank. No one else did. Evan shifted, calculating a new exit. My wife pressed her palm flat against the table again, as if the wood might decide in her favor. The first twist had landed. The man nearby wasn't a stranger. He was my colleague, my ally, the familiar face in every victory photo. And now he stood under the same light that had made us look golden, revealed as another ordinary betrayal. The room inhaled, the collective breath a jury takes right before the verdict. The room hung in that heavy pause after exposure, when everyone has seen enough to know the truth, but no one knows what to do with it. Evan shifted in his chair like a schoolboy caught cheating on an exam. My wife's face had gone pale under her makeup, her lipstick smudged from trembling lips. I let the silence sit. Sometimes silence says more than shouting ever can. I could feel every eye on me, my parents, hers, our friends. They waited for me to explode, to throw a punch, to make a scene. But that wasn't the revenge I wanted. Instead, I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope. Thick, official, weighted with the ending it carried. I set it gently in front of my wife. She flinched, as if the paper itself might burn her. "What's this?" she whispered. "Divorce papers," I said evenly. "Drafted, signed on my end. All that's left is yours." A gasp rippled through the table. Her mother covered her mouth with her hand. My father exhaled through his nose like a man who had just witnessed something both inevitable and cruel. My wife shook her head. "You don't mean this. You're angry, you're humiliated, but we can fix it. We can go to counseling, we can." "Counseling?" I laughed once, humorless. "You don't counsel betrayal. You don't sit in a room and unpack months of lies like old clothes. You end it." Her eyes glistened, tears threatening to fall. She reached for my hand, desperate, but I pulled it away before her touch could land. My body still remembered her warmth, her scent, the way desire flared even in betrayal, but my resolve was stronger now. I turned to Evan, who sat rigid, his tie loosened, sweat beating at his temple. "And you, do you know what happens next?" He swallowed hard. "Look, man, I'm sorry. It wasn't serious. It was convenience." I cut him off. "A colleague's wife. Easy access. Late nights at work, coffee breaks that weren't about coffee. But here's what you didn't know." I slid a second envelope across the table, this one addressed to his wife, because yes, he had one. Copies of the evidence sat inside, ready to detonate his own life as thoroughly as mine. "She'll have these by morning. So while you think about what happens to your career, start thinking about what happens to your home." His face drained of color. He opened his mouth to protest, then shut it again. There was nothing left to say. I looked around the table, at the faces stunned into silence. "I didn't invite you all here for theater," I said, my voice calm, deliberate. "I invited you here because lies grow in the dark. Tonight, everything is in the light. No more pretending. No more secrets." My wife collapsed into her chair, her hands covering her face. A muffled sob escaped her. For a flicker of a moment, I felt pity, a pang of the man I had once been, the man who had loved her so fully he couldn't imagine this ending. But pity is useless when trust is gone. Her father leaned forward, voice hoarse. "Son, are you sure? This is permanent." I nodded. So was her choice. The manager stepped quietly into the room, checking if service should continue. I shook my head, signaling the night was over. He understood, retreating as silently as he had arrived. I stood, straightened my jacket, and looked one last time at the woman who had once been my everything. "You had roses tonight," I said. "You had family, friends, love. You threw it away for secrets in hotel rooms. Now you have the truth. And soon, you'll have nothing else." Then I walked out, leaving the projector cooling behind me, the roses wilting on the table, and the wreckage of her lies for everyone else to sift through. Outside, the night air hit me like a baptism, cold, bracing, cleansing. For the first time in months, I felt light. Not happy, not healed, but free. The night after the dinner, the house sounded different. Doors clicked with a finality I hadn't noticed before. The hum of the fridge, the distant traffic, the heater's shy exhale, ordinary noises, but rearranged, as if the room itself had shifted its weight and decided to rest on my side. I set the projector case on the hallway table and just stood there, palms open, feeling the absence of performance. No audience, no slides, just breath. She didn't come home. At dawn I brewed coffee and watched the street through steam. The roses from La Couronne sat slumped in a vase by the sink, a small, exhausted forest. I should have thrown them out, but I didn't. Let them fade. Things are allowed to end without ceremony. By mid-morning, the emails arrived. Automated court confirmations, my lawyer's brief notes, calendar invites that promised signatures and stamps. Practical words, precise, bloodless. I answered each one like a man paying a bill he'd budgeted for. There's a kind of peace in tasks that don't ask how you feel. She called that afternoon. I let it ring, then picked up on the fifth try. Her voice was raw, like it had been sanded down. Please, she said, skipping hello. Can we talk? We already did, I answered. Not like that. A breath. I'm outside. I looked through the peephole. There she was on the porch, the black dress traded for a sweater, hair pulled up as if she'd had to learn practicality overnight. I opened the door, but not the space between us. She tried a smile that didn't make it to her eyes. You look tired. So do you, I said. Silence stretched, rope between two cliffs. I'm sorry, she murmured. For everything. Sorry is a polite word, a waiting room word. I let it sit and die on the threshold. There are papers, I said. My lawyer sent yours the details. Her eyes shone. You're really going to do this? She said it like a dare, like the part of me that loved her might still argue for oxygen. Yes, I said. We're past maybe. She nodded slowly, then stepped closer, just enough for her perfume to find me. Vanilla and something darker. A sense memory detonated. Her bare shoulder under my hand, the gravity that used to pull us across rooms without speech. She reached up, grazed the knot of my tie with 2 fingers. Heat flickered in my chest, instant and treacherous, the old current waking as if nothing had happened. I miss you, she whispered. I miss us. My body stood at the edge of a familiar cliff. My mind placed a fence there. I caught her wrist gently and lowered it. There is no us by candlelight if there's a stranger by checkout, I said. Wanting isn't the same as keeping. She swallowed, pride folding in on itself. Will you at least let me get my things? They're boxed in the guest room. I stepped aside. She walked past me with that quiet grace that used to make me stupid with gratitude. Even now, as she moved through our home, touching the edges of furniture, the back of a chair, the frame of a doorway, the air changed around her. Attraction doesn't ask permission. It arrives, it tests locks, it leaves teeth marks. I trailed her at a distance, both guardian and spectator. In the bedroom, she paused at our photo, wedding day, sunlight, impossible certainty. We were good, she said softly, thumb grazing the glass. We were true, I corrected. Good came after. She turned, tears frisking the line of her lashes. Do you want me to beg? No, I said. I want you to sign. At the door, she balanced 2 boxes and looked smaller than I remembered. He wasn't worth this, she said. The confession hung strangely between us, both apology and insult. Then she tried one more weapon, the low voice that used to unlock me. If I asked you to hold me, just for a minute, would you? My throat tightened. Desire is persistent. It learns your passwords. I shook my head. I'm not a bridge to the place you burned, I said. I'm the shore you left. She nodded once, a tiny bow to the truth, and walked away. The days that followed moved with clean geometry. I changed passwords, closed accounts, returned duplicate keys. My lawyer guided signatures through digital corridors. Friends texted cautious sentences. We love you both. Here if you need anything. Her parents called once. Her mother cried while her father thanked me for being decent in the indecent. In an odd way, we were allies now. People who loved the same person and had to learn how to love her from a safer distance. Evan resigned on Tuesday. HR sent a bland email about pursuing other opportunities. No one in my office said his name out loud. The space around it felt quarantined. His wife wrote me once more. Filed. Thank you. 2 words, heavy as a gavel. On the morning of the signing, the courthouse smelled like paper and lemon cleaner. We sat at a long table across from each other, pins like tiny swords. She wore gray, hair down, no lipstick. Beautiful in a human way, less stage, more skin. For a second, a reel of ordinary days, pajamas and burnt toast and dancing badly in the kitchen, played behind my eyes. The clerk slid the forms toward us. Lines waited. We wrote our names. "Do you want the ring back?" she asked, almost shy. "Keep it," I said. It belonged to the truth we had then. It can stay there. When it was done, we stood. She looked as if she might step forward and touch my face, then thought better of it. "I hope you're happy," she said, and meant it. "I hope you're honest," I answered, and meant it more. Outside, the sky was something I hadn't seen in months, simple. I walked without destination and ended up by the river. Wind moved the water like a hand, and for a while I watched boats lap the banks, their ropes creaking softly, anchored but free to shift. That's what I felt like, tied to a past that would always move inside me, but no longer dragged by it. That night I did what I had promised myself I would do. I opened my laptop and navigated to the folder that had held my anger together. Receipts. Timestamps. Messages that had once sparked heat and then lit matches. I selected all, pressed delete, emptied the trash. For a second my finger hovered. Power asks for ritual, and then I clicked. The screen blinked to calm. Silence gained a room. I didn't sleep right away. I lay awake, listening to the new shape of my house. At some point, rain started, light as static. I thought about the man who had slipped a tracker into a suitcase, hands shaking. I thought about the man who had stood under a chandelier and let light do the cutting. I thought about the man who now knew how to be alone without being punished by it. Around 2, I went to the kitchen and replaced the wilted roses with nothing. The counter looked better that way, clear, unapologetic. I leaned there until the rain softened to mist. There will be other dinners, I told myself. Other toasts. Maybe even other hands that will find my wrist and not lie. But none of that was the point tonight. Tonight, the point was simple. The quiet belonged to me again. When the sun finally rinsed the edges of the blinds, I brewed coffee and opened the front door. Cool morning air walked into the room. I stood there barefoot, cup warm in one hand, and felt a small, precise joy take its seat where rage had sat for too long. Revenge hadn't fixed me. It had cleared the path. Freedom did the rest.